Try and focus on Garter, make sure he doesn't get a good Echo Slam. And they started things out right. Garter almost drops immediately. Shiki's going to be forced back by the Laguna Blade. Garter's not dead just yet. And Fear puts some damage out. XC drops incredibly low. That weave minus armor taking away these heroes. Oh, Garter, he gets caught by Universe. Found him. CDEC are still trying to just hold around this area, and I'm not sure why. Now already one TP rotation has occurred. Aggressive now pops BKB, turns to go for Samael. Almost getting, but nice snowball save. Goes out to the left-hand side over to the creeps. And Aggressive with all that minus armor and the physical damage of the Clinks make it look easy to rip him apart. 22-6, almost a 40-minute marker, and Evil Geniuses gain more and more control of the game as it goes on.
And Sumail opting to go for the Black King bar so late is such a smart decision. Now you're really starting to see it pay dividends. That 10-second BKB, it just feels like an impossibly long amount of time for CDEC. And that's kind of the strength of the Lina Yules too, is that if you don't pop your BKB when she laser combination on you, then you just die to the Lina. And so every single time the Lina Yules you, and it's in a team fight, you pretty much have to pop your BKB. And now, so as a result, CDEC have 5-second BKBs on both their cores, and it just doesn't last long enough. Like, EG have enough of a lineup with various heroes where they can just make the fights last a really long time.
Nice familiar drops there from Q to kind of cover his retreat. Got initiated on by the Yule Scepter play. But one of those familiars is still going to go down. Jesus, Samael's just so fast and such a long range, he still catches one.
Oh,
Jump in XZ, he tried that one. Snowball is going to be pursued all the way into the Tier 3 tower. Universe immediately pops his BKB with Fear on the side. Well, he almost finished off XZ. Finally, Dragon Slave does get him in the end as he was locked in with the Ice Shard. Samael blinks forward uphill. Doesn't actually do anything with that one. Fear is going to just wait out the Rupture. And they still, Gyrocopter down for 11 seconds. They're actually going to find more here with Q dropping. The gems on the ground. And they still need another 5 seconds for the Gyrocopter. And they do not want to buy back on him, obviously. So CDEC still need another fight, but Samael, he find maybe a potential another pick-off. The XC blinking in, immediately torn apart with the Yule Scepter Laguna Blade. CDEC still looking for an opening here, but not able to really fight Fear at all. Look at the damage on Shiki by itself. There goes the Gyrocopter, the combination out from Universe and Samael. Echo Slam gets laid out, but the damage dealers are already gone. Garter, he can't do anything by himself and will eventually be run down. He's just buying his team seconds at best. Yeah, that's got to be a lane of racks, probably a second lane of racks, GG.
Yeah, they're just going to call it there. They realize there's no such thing as an ideal fight for them anymore.
Right.
The Earthshaker actually had a really good Echo Slam, but there's just no damage on the side of CDEC anymore. And I mean, this game, you could kind of see the direction it was going on early game because of the early death by Shiki mid.
Yeah.
And the tough start that he had. When Sumail had his Yule Scepter, he was still struggling to get his treads. That's not really a recoverable position because then it forced CDEC to abandon their aggressive tri-lane. Like, that was actually going to do a really good job because the Darkseer can beat the Tusk 1v1, they could put a lot of pressure on Fear, but as a result of that death mid by that Bloodseeker, they had to rotate both supports over just to make that lane okay.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a short break here, pass it on through to the analysts to see what they think about CDEC's shot at a game number 2.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Looks like EG is fairly content with that one. PPD with a slight grin there after the game was over. But let's talk about this game a little bit. In the beginning, it didn't look like EG was doing too hot, at least with the plan they came into, or at least the plan didn't seem very clear. But slowly but surely, they start getting the lead, and then they push through for the win. Tell us how that panned out.
I think the mid lane that they were focusing on quite a bit was a really big part of it. Shiki got completely destroyed by Samael. I was looking at the CS a few minutes in. He did get the first blood, right? That's what we were talking about. The first blood was mid because I didn't see that one.
I think so.
Yeah.
And he had like 15-7 CS against 2-1, which should never happen in any matchup generally unless it's like super one-sided. But maybe Shiki, I don't know if he just had a bad game or if he's not very comfortable in Bloodseeker. He might have played it earlier in the tournament, but maybe a different matchup. Sumail, known to be a hyper-aggressive player. It's a hero that you can really abuse in the mid lane, the Bloodseeker. If you get ahead and he wants to get in for the last hit with Blood Rage on because he needs to get his health back, you catch him off guard with a stun, you blow him up with a combo, and maybe that's how he got the first blood. So that's a big part of it for me. In addition, it's something that's very hard to assess whenever you're watching a game with techies. You don't hear the team communication, so you don't know how... Like, you might feel like your hand is forced and that you have to play a completely different game in terms of movements, because when we looked at it from from our perspective, it seemed like the techies didn't do that much.
Right.
But it's very difficult to measure. Like, how do they mentally like feel like they have to? How do they move around the map? Do they feel like they can't farm here and there? Some of their cores didn't get so big. Maybe they would have farmed like 15-20% more if they weren't scared of mines. Who knows? So.
Right, there's definitely has kind of an outside factor, pressure, that you can't always assess just because there aren't kills or explosives going off all the time on the map.
There were two main things for me. Firstly was the Roshan control. The Roshan just died super easily. It was like either like a medallion plus a Clinks, or like a sigil plus Clinks, or Clinks plus mines. There was always something there that was Clinks plus something else, and they just got 3 straight Roshans in a row, and that really kind of pulled them ahead. And on top of that, they actually wanted CDEC to pick BKB once I considered the draft as a whole, because they had so many anti-BKB things. They had Walrus Punch, they had a Blink on Tusk to stun lock him so he couldn't BKB, they had an Axlina, they had a Clinks with massive amounts of physical damage, they had Weave, and they had Techies with landmines and Suicide. That was like as anti-BKB as you can get for a lineup. So they just let him farm, kind of play keep away so they can't snowball with five heroes, just, kind of let them farm, and then once they get their BKBs, they're just wasting 4,000 gold, which you can just easily counter with a Ags Lina, which is 4,200 gold.
Okay. Dakota, what about you? How'd you view this game?
Thought it was funny how he ends up playing techies, and we had a giggle how he's the guy who put on Twitter that he wanted a petition to remove techies from the game, and now he's playing it, and, I agree pretty much with these handsome gentlemen said. It's they had a good, strong start because of their first blood onto the Bloodseeker. It forced out some, rotations from the CDEC side. Already put them in that kind of uncomfortable standard, more defensive, going for the BKBs. And as Ben said, those weren't really viable at the end, which is how much they could still control them. And then by the end of the game, it felt like they were able to corral CDEC like little sheep back into their base, away from the Roche pit. They got what they wanted. I don't know how much experience CDEC has going against the techies. That can set a mentality for a team where you don't really know what happens after you go out the front door of your base. You don't know if there's a stasis you might accidentally walk to and your BKB is not ready to go, and that can get in your head quite a bit.
If they had TA
fair.
4th pick instead of the Visage, I think it would have been way different, because you can't snowball as a Lina versus a TA. It's just really difficult unless you have outside help, and on top of that, you can just run into mines. And you're not going to die.
Let's talk a little bit more about that as we look at one of the highlights from this game, one of the mid-game fights coming up between these two teams. What do you think the logic was for trying to save that TA? Do you think maybe CDEC just never had that on their radar, or they were trying to wait until the very last pick for their mid?
It's difficult to say. From our perspective, TA would have been a great pick in this game as the fourth pick.
Right.
They might have, sometimes in the draft you might overthink and you think of multiple things at once, and then all of a sudden something that might be fairly obvious doesn't come to your mind because you're thinking too far ahead, or you're making it more difficult than it has to be.
Yeah.
Time you replace one hero with another, it makes a completely different game. But the reason it's so important in this game is that instead of Sumail snowballing and owning mid, he would have, if Shiki plays well, drawn at best, TA wins against Lina in top tier Dota. That's just how it is, unless you really make a big mistake. And come mid game in this game, because Bloodseeker is so far behind, he can never go aggressively with confidence. As Ben said, even with BKB, he just gets blown up by physical damage. So a hero like TA, who in this game could maybe, even if she gets BKB, she can still ignore a lot of the physical damage sources. Like, you could tank 6 attacks from clicks without taking damage, or was it in Refractions 7? I can't remember number of instances. It's been changed a couple times.
I mean, it's also good versus Lina. It's also good at taking Roche, which I think were their main issues.
It would just have been really, really solid for a lot of purposes in this game. And to be honest, that seemed like the weakness in their draft was just that the mid lane just went horribly wrong.
What can Bloodseeker do versus that lineup, honestly? Like, you pretty much can't use your first skill, or you're just going to die instantly.
Yeah, and you're picking it into a Dazzle. Dazzle's good at sustaining your lanes, so he doesn't get that advantage of other lanes, getting weak and wounded, and him being able to use that advantage. PBD's there to be the medic and keep him boosted up. So, yeah, pretty much a struggle at the start. Maybe they were thrown off a bit from EG opening up with the Lina and couldn't really identify if it was going to be the Sumail hero, and they wanted to wait it out a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we considered those options. You bring up a good point with the Dazzle, of course, that it's going to affect how that lane plays out. We have another highlight from that game. As we take a look at that, let's talk a little bit about, techies, if you're not used to playing it, are you afraid of it coming out 2 times in a row? Because you're just not confident playing against the hero.
I think they might ban it in the second phase if there's a Tusk pick now, but else, I think they don't. Like, even though honestly, CDEC did a pretty good job in the early game, not letting Techies take over the map. Like, we've seen other teams play against Tusk Techies, and it just seems like every time Suicide is up, they find a kill with Snowball. But it happened maybe twice in this game, in the early game. One time on aggressive top, and there might have been one gank mid that was successful in Bloodseeker. I can't remember for sure, but it wasn't really that impactful. Still, it's what propels Techies into the game. They countered his early mines bottom instantly with a sentry. They identified where Aoi was and that he was placing the mines. If he doesn't get the couple of setups with Suicide Squad attack, you could look at a really, really useless Techies in the first 10 to 15 minutes. So, without the Tusk, I generally don't really see many teams picking the hero this tournament, honestly. Okay. It's just so important.
All right, Dakota, would you agree that if the Tusk is on, the threat really isn't there unless it's like a super pocket pick for certain teams?
Yeah, I don't think they'll go as far as to ban like a Tusk in round 1. I think it would be too risky to allow one of those bigger, badder heroes on through. But I agree with Sin. If it is going to be picked up early from like EG, let's say, they might ban it second round. But PPD has made it known. I know in his draft analysis for last year, he said that he doesn't like to go with the same draft twice, even if it works. But I have also seen him pick same drafts twice since then. So it's hard to say. He could say that to just try to, in case any opponents are watching out there, and he'll actually pick it up twice. We'll have to see, though. But I would wager we're not going to see Techies again here.
Okay, so going forward, EG having won that one map, they're much safer now. I believe pretty much safe for top 2. I don't think they have much of a chance of dropping down to the third place seed right now in Group B. Yeah, maybe even impossible. So they've got to feel a lot better now, less pressure. That's pretty much going to wrap up the group stages for them as we go into the second game between these two teams. CDIC, on the other hand, also not feeling too bad. But if EG 2-0s, do they catch up? No. Okay, we're gonna have
They
to
definitely do need to 2-0 CDEC if they want to get to number 1.
If EG 2-0,
oh right, and then it's and then
it's in
they have
CDEC's
to
hands.
wait. Right, it's in CDEC's hand because CDEC has another match. Right,
It's pretty
Talked
good
about this
actually.
earlier.
If they 2-0 CDEC